pleased to be joined now on Knucks and Pucks by a guy who has 278 NHL games across 7 seasons, as well a World Junior silver medal and a Memorial Cup to his name, Jeff Woywitka. Jeff, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, Jeff, I mentioned all of your playing stats there and, some of those, going through your games and whatnot, but you're currently the assistant coach with the Sherwood Park Crusaders in the AJHL. I guess just, how's the season going? How are you guys, staying busy and, working with COVID right now?
Well, it's been a struggle, obviously, in this day and age, and the way it's been working is it's a day-to-day process, and we go through our testing once a week. So hopefully every Wednesday that we go through our testing, it's negative, and which it has been through the start of it all. So it's been good, and it's just a joy being at the rink with the group we have and the players we got. Obviously, was a little bit of a turnover from last year. It seems like forever ago that we were number 1 in the country and waiting to make a big playoff run until we got shut down. But that's all been kibosh. So we've moved on, and we got a lot of new faces, a lot of young character guys, and a lot of promising young players that are coming up. And we just got out of a series with Bonnyville that we played them 8 times, and we went 6-2. And you guys probably know how hard Bonnyville plays day in and day out. And for our group to go through that and that process and to get that experience playing a really tough Bonnyville team, this is going to go a long way with our group here into the future and into next year.
Now, I want to move it back to your junior career. And as Evan mentioned, you did win a Memorial Cup with the Red Deer Rebels, but I want to take it to the start. And obviously you went and played for Brent Sutter, and obviously a huge name even today. But back then, I got to think even bigger just coming off his playing career. What were your thoughts on heading to Red Deer and playing for a guy like him?
Well, obviously I was an undrafted player at the time, and I just got listed as a 15-year-old. And my last year midget was playing in with the Wainwright Polar Kings AA. So it was quite the jump. And obviously I went to camp, and I remember that summer I was just ready to take off to go to Red Deer. And hopefully, I wasn't even, it's always, you weren't really thinking of earning a spot at 16, but if the opportunity was there, you'd do it. And that's when they announced Brent Sutter had taken over as head coach. And it was just like, wow, you get to go under a guy and hopefully play for a guy who's got so many, NHL games. The Sutter family's well known in Alberta. He's won about 4 Stanley Cups, I think, and just a guy who can really, you got to take advantage of those situations, and to get an opportunity to get coached by him and the development he had from when he started until he just resigned here a week ago. He's turned a lot of players into men, and he's made a lot of guys a lot of money over the career of, turning him into pros. And that's what his motto was. He was a guy that he meant business. And if you didn't mean business, you weren't there. And that was just the reality. And the guys who bought into the plan and bought into the system were there, and he had no issues with that. And then the guys he felt weren't going to fit in, he weeded you out, and he made sure that he didn't prolong it. So he was good. He was really good for my development. He's helped me. I still stay in touch with him to this day. And, he took that program from, I don't know if you went on Spit and Chicklets and heard his interview when he had it on with Spit and Chicklets, but he did a great job. And it was quite impressive what he was, when he first took over the Rebels, how he had to sacrifice his farm and put it up for collateral just to make, ends meet and buying the team, right? So he's done a great job, and he'll continue to do a good job there, just not on the coaching side, but the managing side for sure.
Yeah, you brought up Spit and Chicklets, and the one thing I did want to ask you about was the wooden stick story. I mean, what was that like from your perspective as a player, getting handed this wooden twig and told to use it for a month or so?
Well, it was we were using those synergies at the time, so we still had to take the blade and glue it into the synergy. And so it was like, when we had the synergies, it was like, wow, we're out of the wood stick era. This is nice. It's so light. You can really snap the puck around. You're shooting hard. It was nice. It was a nice stick. And then all of a sudden we had, we were terrible in Brandon. We go in there and they're just beating the heck out of us. And Sutter came in. I just remember it to this day. I remember he went to Radar And I think the assistant coach there at the time, Dallas Goman, he made sure that we didn't play with another synergy, because we were getting spoiled at the time. And I just remember, obviously him selling them in the gift shop, and it became a big hit around the Rebels organization, and all these fans had these sticks with work on them, and that was it was motto. And obviously that's the way he was brought up, and he made sure his players worked hard, just as hard as he did.
And I mean, I don't know if it was, the sticks changing or, what it was, but something seemed to help. I mean, Jeff, you guys went from, your first year there, you guys were about a 500 team, I think like 10th or so in the standings. And then the next year, I mean, you guys go and just run away first place, WHL champions. What do you think, I guess, the change was from, year one to year two there? Was it just, I guess, the mentality, the culture of Sutter coming in, really taking over, or what was it in your mind?
I think it was a lot to do with that. I think the culture was a big thing with Brent, and it took that year to, I guess, sort everything out, and he wanted to make sure he got his guys in. And then that year he first took over, we had, I think we had 4 16-year-olds on that team at that time, and he made sure we all played, we all got experience, and he was always fair across the board, and he knew his guys that he wanted, and he built a team in no time. And we made the year we were going for it, he made a big trade with Saskatoon, and we ended up acquiring like Martin Erat in that trade, which was a huge acquisition for us. It became a big part, and probably was the deal breaker going down the stretch, because he was such a great player at that time. And then just adding him into like the Maple Top, Lucas Chuck, Vandermeer, we had Colby Armstrong, a lot of big name players who had really good careers, and ended up, I think all those guys, remember talking to Carter Sears, our head scout at the time. He says we had 16 or 17 guys off that team play one NHL game. So like, that's insane. So that shows you how deep we were, and how good a job he did. And our record spoke for itself, and it was just fun going to the rink. We had good leadership too. Like, obviously Jim Vandermeer was probably the premier captains in the league. He was skilled, but yet he was tough. Like, he could fight anyone. He was just that hard-nosed guy from Caroline that, he made sure he had that team, and he took us under his wing, and he did a really good job.
Now, you guys really were kind of at the top of the league all throughout that season, but going into the Memorial Cup final against Val-d'Or, a bit of a roller coaster. You went up 2-0, we're down 5-3, come back to win 6-5 in OT. What are those emotions like in that game for you guys playing in it?
Oh, it was crazy. I just remember it to this, I still remember to this day, we were the talent that was there, and just like the excitement that was around, like the Regina at that time. It was impressive. And, it was kind of like a blur at times, like knowing that we're in the Memorial Cup, and like, this is for the biggest, one of the hardest trophies to win in hockey, and to have a chance to do it, and do it so quick, and into my junior career. I was 17, just the atmosphere is everything. Your families were all there, and then you getting into the overtime game. And I actually was on the ice at the time for the goal, and I remember it was a shot from the corner, a quick shot, and kind of hit a couple things. And obviously there was some speculation who got the goal at the time. It was either Jeff Smith or Doug Lynch, but at that time we didn't really care. We were just happy that we won the Memorial Cup, and obviously that was a huge part of just even for us young guys, and a lot of guys furthering on getting jobs in hockey, because it's winning solves a lot of problems at any level, and if you can win, it just helps you out in so many ways. And I was fortunate enough to do it at a young age, and that so happened it was when we won the Memorial Cup, it was our draft year at the time, so that didn't hurt the rankings as far as going into the draft that year, because we had Colby went, I think, 19th overall to Pittsburgh, and then I went to Philly at 27. So it was, and then I think we had Doug Lynch in the early second round, and then Wanvig, I think he wasn't even supposed to go. Like, his draft year was a couple years before that, but he re-entered the draft, and he ended up going 2 in that draft. So it was we had a lot of guys go, and it just solved a lot of problems, and it was good timing.
I mean, you said it there, like winning sort of, it sets you guys up, nothing bad really comes from winning. And you kind of saw that with your guys' teams, that winning that the WHL and the Mem Cup seemed to set up, the Red Deer dynasty in those early 2000s. I mean, just looking back at it now, obviously that year was the year that you guys won, but you guys made it to the finals those next 2 years. If you had to, pick one team, and this might be tough now, but was that the best Red Deer team you were on, or was there, ones that you think could have competed with that Red Deer team?
We had another team there that was, I think it was the year right after we lost to Kootenay in the league final. We lost to Kootenay, and I remember that time, and I remember Sutter saying we had another chance probably to do a repeat, but we kind of fell short, and we still had the group, like we still had the young character. Like we had a lot of good players. We had I think Phaneuf at the time, who was an unreal player. Cam Ward, the goalie. Like we just kept restocking the cupboards year after year, and we obviously, I think we should have probably won one more, but that being said, you're happy to get one, and that's why you can never kind of take it for granted, because you just never know, and you got to catch so many breaks along the way, and so many bounces got to go your way too. So we'll take one, but obviously we had the chance to probably win a couple there, but kind of sucks, but we'll take one.
Yeah, one's not a bad deal at all. Two would be nice, but one's pretty good. I want to move it over now to the draft you just brought up, 2001 in Florida, and you mentioned went 27th overall. How nerve-wracking is that experience, especially when it's the draft and you could be a first rounder, but anything can happen, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where you're talking with your agent in the summer, and you're going into it thinking where you're kind of projected, where you kind of fit in, but like you said, until your name's called, you don't really know what's going to happen or where you're going to go, right? And, a lot of things, trades can happen, movements can happen where, maybe one team doesn't get the guy they want, but they get him over here. So you could keep dropping also too. So I remember I was projected probably in the 15th to 25, but I ended up, I guess, falling to 27th, which wasn't, bad. And I was happy to go there and happy to go to the Flyers, and just to have your name picked in the first round to go on stage with Gary Bettman, Bobby Clark, and Paul Holmgren at the time. That's a lot of experience and a lot of hockey knowledge there. So cool time. I remember I was sweating I couldn't believe how much I was sweating. I didn't even want to stand up because it was so nerve-wracking at the time. But once your name got called, it was good, and a life experience for sure.
Jeff, did you have conversations with the Flyers before that? And, what were those conversations like? Did you have an idea that they were looking at you and stuff?
Well, I remember a lot of Flyers, there was a lot of scouts at our games throughout that year coming down to visit. Brent Sutter had a lot of relationships with a lot of scouts. He knew a lot of hockey people, made the process pretty easy. And you go into the combine too, you're always talking to a few teams, but you never really have one team in order. And I never really, you're projected to go somewhere, but I wasn't thinking I'm going to go to the Philadelphia Flyers at that time. It was kind of just happened. But it didn't surprise me in a sense, because I did have some meetings with them, they were getting to know me, I was getting to know them, but nothing. It was kind of like that with all the teams, but some teams did stand out a little bit more, but you just never know until your name's picked.
Now, another huge moment for you in your junior career was obviously the World Junior Championship, something I think every Canadian kid wants to be a part of. What's that process like? Because we only ever see the tournament, but it's really a months-long process to make that team. What's that like for you as a player going through it?
Well, it's obviously at that age, you're looking at it even previous years when you weren't playing in it. Leading up, everybody wanted to watch the World Juniors at Christmas. It was one of those things. It was just an icon. It just, that's what people expected. I know there's opening presents and all that, but it's, turning on the TV and putting on the Canadian jersey and everybody getting together to watch it. And to be a part of that was it was obviously a dream come true to put on the Canadian jersey and to play with so many good players. And, that's another thing in your when you look back, you think about how hard it was to make that, and the steps and the grinds you had to go through to even get a chance to do that, and how many things had to fall into place. And, looking back, you're really fortunate, and you're really, those are stories that you can tell, like even players that I coach now, I can relate to them. I can tell them stories, stay with it, all those things. It's nothing comes easy in the hockey world, but if you work for it, you never know what can happen. But the experience was great. It was in Canada. We had a lot of good, fans. The support was unreal. We had, guys like Tutu and that who really revved up the crowd when we were playing. So we just had a great group, and a lot of those guys, they all turned out to be, I think, a lot of them had really good careers in the NHL. So it was really it was something. And, when you make those kind of teams, it's special.
Is there maybe one moment from that tournament that stands out above the rest for you?
Well, I think just like, obviously, I guess you could go back to me and Jordan Tutu. We had a lot of battles throughout our junior career in Red Deer. He was with Brandon. I don't know if there was a game that went by that me and him didn't drop the gloves with each other. He didn't jump me off the bench. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, this kid really must want to fight every night. And I don't know what it was, whether his coach coming after me, but he messaged me the one time. He says, "Don't worry, it was all in fun. I just thought it was funny." I said, "I didn't think it was that funny. I didn't want to fight you every game." But I understand what he was doing, because probably to get me off my game. But I just remember him at the World Juniors. He was everybody wanted to see Jordan Tutu, and the way he played, he was so hard nosed. He just would light guys up. Like there was no rules when Jordan Tutu was on the ice. He would just go after you, and it was fun. And obviously, when you look at the World Juniors, you don't see too many players like Jordan Tutu now, with that kind of stature and that kind of, aggression. It's more, I guess you could say, he was a skill guy, but he was a powerhouse, and he was fun to, obviously it was fun to play on his team for once and play against him. So
I got to think too, another big moment for you was the fact that you did score the game winner against the United States in the semifinal. Did you ever have a goal as big as that one in your career?
I don't know. I don't think so. Obviously, I remember that goal to this day, and I still, even coaching here in Sherwood Park, the boys want to see it and see how it all unfolded. But I just remember it was about 4 or 5 minutes to go in the third period, and we're playing the U.S. and back to Tutu being on the ice. He got into the forecheck, and he was causing some stuff and made the D-man. I don't know who it was Newski or something. He kind of panicked and hard rimmed it, and Stajan kind of intercepted it on the other side. And then Stajan made a beautiful play through the slot, through a bunch of 2 or 3 skates, found my stick, and I just kind of went down the slot and I shot it. And I guess I just was hoping it'd go in, and I shot it as quick as I could. And obviously it found a way in, and was obviously a huge goal for our team and the country, because we ended up going on to the final from that.
Tutu paid you back from all those fights earlier in junior, eh?
Yeah, he did. He's like, that's how I repay you. And I said, that's perfect. I'll take
that. Jeff, next season after the World Juniors, there was your first year of pro hockey. I guess just, what was the toughest part of jumping up from junior to pro for yourself?
Oh, just the speed. I think that just like the player's size, the way they move the puck, the way they shoot. I think just everything happens quicker. There's no soft plays when you get to the pro level. Everybody's doing things hard, and they're doing it with a purpose. Where in junior, you're maybe, passes aren't as sharp, or maybe, you kind of let your foot off the gas in a sense in some plays. But you just found out once you got up to those higher levels, you got to make the smart plays and the hard plays all the time, or else they're going to end up in the back of your net. Whereas in junior, you might get let off the hook a little bit if you do make a play through the middle and the guy intercepts you, he might not score. But in the pros, it's going to end up biting you in the butt.
I mean, Jeff, for yourself, you're a big guy, and going from juniors to pro where, half the players are these big guys. Was that tough too, going from manhandling guys to maybe the opposite?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody was kind of in the same, I could get away with it in junior in a sense where I would, use my body positioning, move pucks, get a little bit more time and space, where that space kind of closed off as you got higher up, because guys weren't as scared, like they weren't scared or afraid, or they didn't care. They wanted to beat you and they wanted to win the battle for the puck. And it just shows you every shift and every game at the pro level is so important. You got to be focused. You got to be engaged all the time, or else if you don't, you can look stupid quick.
Now, you did start your NHL career with the St. Louis Blues, and I saw online that your nickname in St. Louis was Ishmael from the movie Kingpin. How did that come about?
I don't know. As you probably see my hair in here, it looks a little sloppy at times. No, there'd be times where it would kind of just lay flat on my head. And you know how Ishmael is on Kingpin. It's kind of just lays flat and there's not really any life to it, right? I guess. So that's kind of how my hair kind of was. And I had a lot of nicknames, but I remember that one. And also, I guess, the farming background too. I guess when they see that, they, working on a farm, doing all that kind of stuff, they just had it all part and parcel for me.
The helmet didn't do you any favors too, I guess, the whole laying flat.
No, it didn't do me any favors. That's for sure. You betcha.
So just sticking with St. Louis here, and you played with a ton of guys, kind of veterans near the end of their careers, Keith Tkachuk being one of them, Mike Sillinger as a young guy coming into the NHL. What do you remember about, being on such a veteran-laden roster in St. Louis?
Well, I just remember guys like Keith Tkachuk, they were so you'd go in, and the first time I ever met Keith Tkachuk was quite an experience, actually, because I walked into the dressing room and I called him, and I was just a young kid, obviously coming first NHL camp, and I seen Keith and I said, "Hey Keith, how's it going? Nice to meet you." He's like, "It's Big Walt to you." He called the old Walter Tkachuk. So he was always kind of a guy who he was always a step above you, and he made sure that you knew that he was the king of the room. But he did everything. Like, he taught me so much in a sense of, he was always a hard-nosed guy, but he did everything hard in a sense of, he passed the puck hard. Didn't matter, practice, games, everything. You had to be ready for his passes, or else if you weren't, it was obviously, he didn't care. He just wanted to make sure that you knew how to pass hard and do everything hard, because at that level, you got to be able to do everything hard and quick, or else you don't fit in there. So he taught me a lot about that. Just playing with a lot of guys who with so much experience, and guys who, you just learn. And those kind of vets, they were kind of the old school vets, where the game's kind of changed since probably then, because those guys probably, there wasn't the social media back then as there is now, and maybe could get away with a little bit more of that kind of stuff back in the day than they can now. And guys got to be careful where they go out and do all that. But we had a lot of fun as a group. We always go out for dinners when we get to the hotel. Guys had fun, but guys also worked hard, and they treated you like men, and they were pros.
I heard Mike Sillinger's method for recovery was to ice from the inside out.
Yeah, I can attest to that. We always kept bugging him how many teams he played on. I think he played on every NHL team in the league. So he'd always make smart remarks, and we'd bug him about how many teams he's played on because of trades and all that. So no, he was a character, and he was one of those guys that, the one-liners he had, and those guys were just they were so witty and so smart.
Well, and just going back to Keith Tkachuk, I was thinking, that's definitely not a guy you want to get on the wrong side of, right?
No, absolutely. He was like I said, he took things serious, and he everything he did, he made sure that, he wanted the best for his team, but he also made sure that you knew that, you got to take advantage of your opportunity when you're there. You got to make a name for yourself in a sense, because there's only, when you get there, you only got so much time to showcase yourself and to show that you can play at that level. So he always made it clear to us that don't take anything for granted. Take care of yourself, but also be ready to go when the puck drops.
Now, that obviously 2005-06, your first season in St. Louis, a tougher time on the ice for the Blues, obviously picked up the first overall pick. But could you tell at that point that St. Louis had what it took to be a hockey city like we've seen more recently with their playoff runs?
Oh, yeah. Everybody who played there or is from around there always loved just staying there. I just know guys like Doug Wade, Keith Tkachuk, those guys all have houses there. They enjoyed living there, and it was just a great hockey city and a great sports city. Like the Cardinals were there, and at that time, I even think we even caught a few of the Rams games. The football team was there at the time, but just like everything was just downtown. It was the hype was, that's when the Cardinals were doing well, and they were winning, World Series, and we were coming around. We were a younger team, but we were also headed in the right direction. And it was a cool city and a great place to play, and I enjoyed every minute of it there.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, the hockey culture, like, how did it differ, I guess, between St. Louis, Dallas, and New York for yourself?
Well, St. Louis was high up there too, and then you go to a place like Dallas, which is a classier city. It's a lot of like nice restaurants. It's always, the weather's always good there. The buildings, it's just a classy place, right? You got the Cowboys there. You got, good looking women there all the time. Like you're in a place where it's like, you're kind of in like that little Hollywood era where it's like, people there, they take pride in dressing good, looking good. And it was just a fun place to play. Like, you always loved going to the rink there. We had a great group, and me and Jamie Benn actually lived in the same condo complex my first year. And then we ended up living together our second year. And he was, I think, 20 at the time or something. I was 26, but we became like really good friends, and we had a really good time together. And I just remember he just loved sleeping all the time, but man, when he wanted to wind her up too, he could wind it up too. So he was a fun guy, and I learned a lot from him in a sense of, obviously don't hear from him a lot now, but like when he'd come to Edmonton, I'd meet up with him or I'd see him, and when he was still playing, or when he's playing here, but obviously he can't now. But he was a guy that was a really good friend, and we had a great team. I just remember that year we had a great team. Like, I remember Brad Richards, Louis Erickson, and James Neal were on a line that year, and they were just so good. They were so good. I couldn't believe how good they were. And like, just the way you'd go on drills with them, and like a 3-on-3 drill or something. And they were just, their hockey sense was so good. It was just hard to handle those guys.
Could you tell even at 20 with Jamie Benn that he would become the premier power forward that he is today?
Yeah, I think so. Like, obviously when Jamie first came in, and he probably won't like me telling you this, but he was a guy that needed a lot of work, like off the ice as far as the gym. But man, you throw a pair of skates on that guy and it didn't even matter. He was dominant. Like, whether he maybe looked a little bit out of shape at the time, he would put on skates and he'd go out there, and it didn't matter. He was the best player. You knew he was going to be a stud in this league because he was so strong. He skated so powerful, and he could shoot bombs. Like, those guys were just, you could just tell there's no surprise where he's at today and why he's the leader and the captain of the Dallas Stars.
And I mean, he was like a 5th rounder or something too, so he definitely was slept on there. I mean, do you think because, like you said, a little bit of that off-ice type stuff, do you think that was a big reason he was overlooked?
Yeah, well, maybe that a little bit, or maybe he was just kind of a later developer. I just think when they first saw him come into camp, they're like, they knew he was good, but they didn't realize he was that good, in a sense where he was just, some guys just fit in right away. Some guys you don't think are going to be, maybe at that elite level, turn out to be those elite players because they figure it out, they know how to play, and they just, their hockey sense takes over, and they just become men, and they're just meant to be pros, right? So I was fortunate enough to play with him and to room with him and to do a lot of things and learn a lot from him. And it was a fun time. Like, I really enjoyed my time in Dallas for sure.
Now I want to move it to your last NHL stop in New York, and I got to think that had to have been quite the experience because, one, I mean, you're in New York. 2, you went to the conference finals that year, and just all the personalities in that room. I mean, John Tortorella, Marian Gaborik, Henrik Lundqvist, Sean Avery. What was it like walking into that dressing room for the first time?
Well, I was like, obviously I ended up going there because I signed with Montreal, but I got put on waivers the last day of training camp with Montreal. And Mark Stahl, I remember, went down in training camp, and Brad Richards, who was in Dallas with me the year before, ended up going to New York, signing in New York. And he was the guy that kind of, I think, threw the ball out there to get me to New York. And he was the guy that messaged me and said, "Hey, just stay patient. We might be going after you," because that's, a lot of things were going down at that time. But just to walking into New York and just seeing the players there, and like, you know, you're like you said, the Averys, like guys like those guys, you don't realize. I guess they're kind of clowns, but you don't realize until you get there how big a clowns they can be. But that's the way he played, and that's the way he got by, right? That's the way he had to play in order to survive in the NHL. He was a guy that was a pest, but he did it to the fullest, and you know, maybe went overboard at times, but found a way to make a living and do well at it. And obviously with Henrik Lundqvist, one of the best goalies in the world, one of the hardest work ethics I've ever seen as far as battle and compete on the ice. So he didn't want to get scored on any time. And he was a great guy. But when you get to that New York, it's just a different world. And guys, it just almost felt like it was you were a little bit out of place in a sense, because a farm kid from Vermilion playing in New York wasn't ideal, but I enjoyed every minute of it, and I learned a lot from Tortorella, and I had a really good coaching staff at that time, and things I'll never forget.
I was just about to say, you know, if going to St. Louis, you're looked at as the farm kid, you know, what's it like going to New York? Just even more there.
Oh, absolutely. It's like I said, it's the way they did things there. Like, we'd practice out in Tarrytown, which is about 45 minutes away from New York City. And then we'd have our practice rink there. And then on game days, we'd have to, like, if you lived outside of the city of New York, they'd get you hotel rooms downtown New York, and you'd walk across the rink almost like you were on the road to go to the rink. You would take your suit with you, pack your stuff, and drive there. And it was so, like, different, but yet they just took such good care of you. Like, I remember walking into the practice rink, and we had the first time iPads and iPods ever came out. We look in our stalls, and Glenn Sather was usually the guy who had all these connections, and he put iPads and iPods in our stalls. And I just remember him saying, "Boys, you guys keep winning, I'll keep buying." And we just enjoyed that, because remember back in the day when iPads were first coming out, everybody wanted one, no matter what. No matter how much money guys were making, they always wanted a free iPad. So it was cool, and great experience for sure.
Guess it's literally the Big Apple then.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Sure. Now, one bill you did have to pick up actually was on 24/7, the road to the Winter Classic, and you lost credit card roulette. Was that the biggest bill you ever picked up in the show?
Well, it was, other than my rookie dinner. The rookie dinner was a hefty one too. It was $5,000 US for the rookie dinner. So that one stung a little bit too. So, and then leading back to the credit card game, those always hurt, when you're only making, when you're just making above minimum wage in the NHL, which is still good, but I'm not making Henrik Lundqvist money, but obviously to pay for that it's all fun. You look back, and those are memories like you'll never forget. And did it suck at the time? Yeah, nobody wants to spend money like that, or you want somebody always to pay for your own meal, right? You don't ever want to do that. So, but at the time it was cool. It was on that HBO 24/7 and leading up to the Winter Classic, and just everything kind of fell into place, and it was a cool time.
And it's all worth it now for the memories, right?
Absolutely. If they mention my name with Henrik Lundqvist, I'm all for it.
I guess just first and foremost, as a player, did you always think that you were going to become a coach after your career was done?
Well, I didn't really have that kind of in my mindset or in my thoughts, but I always liked the game. I always liked studying the game. I always liked learning. I was always a guy after practice working on things, wanting to get better. And I just remember having so many good coaches along the way that I learned so much from and still talk to today. And the game's changing immensely, like daily. And you try to stay on top of everything, because there's things you do learn when you played, but also there's adjustments you got to make because the game is changing, and you want to make sure you're giving the kids the right feedback in a sense that you're up to date with all that kind of stuff. So it worked out, and it's worked out really good, because I got the house in Sherwood Park, and Kyle Chase, he just recently got let go, but he was the guy that brought, me and Adam on to the Crusaders and started out, and I got to owe him a lot of credit as far as getting me started with the coaching. end of it. And he was a really good starting point, because we had a connection going back to even Kelly Chase in St. Louis. That's how I got to know the kind of the Chase family. And then when I'd come back to Sherwood Park, Kyle was always nice enough to let me skate with the Crusaders and get some ice time with them when I was waiting to go away for camp or that. But I've enjoyed every minute of it. I enjoy working with the players. I enjoy getting better every day. And obviously, when I'm out there, I just want to have fun with them. And obviously, I want to get the most out of your players anymore. I think you got to have a good relationship. They got to trust what you're doing, and they got to, when they ask you something, you better have the answer for it, because if you don't, then you feel like you're letting them down, and then there's that trust factor. So everything that they come up to me about, I want to make sure I know, and I want to have feedback for them.
Is there any aspect about the coaching job itself that you maybe didn't think about as a player, or kind of surprised you as you do make that transition to being behind the bench?
Well, I think just a lot of obviously the benching, the monitoring the bench, working the bench, the video, the scouting, the cutting, breaking down opposing teams, breaking down video of games you just played, doing all the other things that you just do in junior. Booking hotels, booking meals. Like, there's a lot of things that go into running a junior team, because you don't have all the pieces all the time, because you're on a budget, and sometimes everybody's role is different, and any role that you do or what you do, everybody has their thing that they got to do, and you got to do it to the fullest, because I think when you do that, the program shows, and people know when you're running a good program, and you want to make sure that when you're here, you're giving the kids every opportunity to get to the next level and enjoy their experience.
I mean, Jeff, obviously having gone through the junior ranks and, gone to that next level, is there one thing, I guess, what's the biggest mistake that you see players coming into junior doing that, I guess, you have to coach out of them to push them to that next level?
Well, I think kids coming out of midget and all that, like if they're coming into midget to junior, that's a huge step also. And I think it all goes back to, I always approach it too, like whether I'm doing the drills with the defenseman or any other player, doing just some skill work with them or working with them, I always make sure they do things hard, and they do it properly, because I think guys, you can let your foot off the gas in a sense of maybe turning a blind eye, but you can't turn a blind eye. You got to make sure you correct it. And if it takes 2 or 3 times for them to go through the rep to get it right, you got to make sure you get it right for them, because if you don't, you feel like when I come home, if I feel like I'm not teaching the kid right, or I'm not doing it right with them, I feel like I'm letting them down, and I'm not giving them that opportunity. So I want to make sure when everything I do with them, I do it hard, and I let them know what I had to go through to get to that next level. And I keep telling these guys, I never learned that until I was in the NHL. You're learning it now in junior, which is, you guys got to be pretty happy about that, because now you don't really have the time now. You got to be ready to go. You don't have that long of a window to make it, and it's showing just the way the game's evolving.
Jeff, this was awesome. I think we've taken up enough of your time, but we got to say thank you very much for taking this time and joining us. It was a pleasure.
No problem. I appreciate you guys having me on.